Russia wins China's backing in the NATO showdown over Ukraine. What's going on in the world? Why is China backing Russia? What's the deal? We'll talk about these questions in the video today. We're going to touch on the topic of the US and China relationship and Russia-China relationship as well, which could give us a brief idea about where this could be going. Anyway, if you like videos like this, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell to not miss any updates. Russia and China both were communist nations, but they had huge differences over the Marxist ideology with increased time. The impact was to such an extent that the Communist Party of China formally denounced the Soviet variant of communism as a result of a manipulated and altered version of Marxist ideology, hence Sino-Soviet split of 1961. This shows that China and Russia were not on good terms. Later, by the end of the decade, there was a Sino-Soviet border war. Now, in the 1970s, Russia and China were still salty about the differences in their ideologies, but the Chinese had a good relationship with the US. Henry Kissinger, the foreign minister at the time, made a couple of trips to China where the Chinese official requested the implementation of the One China policy, where there's only one China, and they are formal administrators, as those days the United States thought that Taiwan was the true China. So, by the end of 1979, China and the US were like best friends. 1989. Russia and China still weren't on good terms, but Mikhail Gorbachev, in his efforts to maintain a good relationship with China, made a couple of trips there. Russia invades Afghanistan and helps establish a communist government. But since the US was aiding Afghanistan, that made China lean over Russia, and their relationship seemed to improve. The Soviet Union then fell in 1991, which further ensured a good relationship with China. And further, in 2001, Vladimir Putin signed the historic Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation. This meant that the bond was strong and this treaty was helping both nations. In 2001, the treaty meant that China would acquire a stable source of natural gas and energy, and their military would be aided by Russian military training and technology. This was extremely beneficial to China as well. Russia was getting business. And now, China's grip over Central Asia is a bit of a concern for Russia, and Central Asia is made up of 5 stances that were formerly a part of the USSR, and China politically influences Ventral Asia through SCO, that's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, as we know, Russia is a gas giant, and China has the largest population. China remains Russia's biggest trading partner, but during the pandemic, the demand for natural gas was low in China, and Russia's demand for machinery didn't change. This created a deficit trade. Sanctions were made by Western countries and would force Russia to lean more on China, which will further strengthen Chinese economy, so Russia depends on China for business. As Russia wants to strengthen its relationship with China, this could mean that Russia will provide more coal and natural gases. Furthermore, the US-China trade war has given Russia more opportunities to export large agricultural products to China. The Moscow-Kazan high-speed rail is being built by China's BRI funds. China's Alipay will soon be offering services in China. China and Russia are also agreeing on cooperating on a permanent moon base. Power of Siberia pipeline is said to be distributed to China, which will export natural gas to China. Now, Huawei is banned in most countries, including the US, but Russia recently bought Huawei equipment to conduct 5G trials. This shows that Russia is trying to win China over. This relationship is strategic from Russia's point of view, and China is just happy with what they're getting from it. China-America relationship. They are the 2 most powerful countries in the world, which indicates major rivalry as they preach different ways the world should work. America believes in democracy, and on the other hand, the Chinese run an autocracy and certainly want to promote the same. During the Cold War, when China was conquering Tibet, the CIA funded the Tibetan army, but they lost the war. The US also backed the government on Taiwan. This will nudge the Chinese with the notion of the US sticking noses in their internal affairs. The USA treats Taiwan as an independent entity in everything, whereas China sees Taiwan as a renegade province. The US wants free internet, and China wants the internet to be censored. This is why they say the USA and China are destined for war, but the USA at this point seem like the good guys in the game, trying to aid people who are jeopardizing humanity with invasions and national threats. These invasions are very damaging to the economy, and they would affect it on a global scale, as NATO clearly said that any country can join them. This means that the Soviet Union too can join, but since NATO was created to provide security against the Soviet Union, they might be salty about it. But this shows that China and the US might not be on good terms at this point. Russia and China have opposed the expansion of NATO on the European borders. They say it is a negative US influence in the Asia, Pacific, and European regions. They've asked the US to end its approach to Cold War diplomacy. China Morning Post last week said, China has pleaded with Russia to delay the invasion for the Beijing Olympics. Now, Russia has recently stationed around 100,000 troops at the borders of Ukraine. This led to NATO sending troops at the European borders on standby to aid if Russia invades Ukraine. This Cold War mentality seems to agitate the Russian officials, and China is backing up Russia on this. And they insist on the NATO troops being sent back and stopping the NATO expansion. Ukraine's point of view. In February and March 2014, Russia invaded and annexed the Crimea Peninsula. This led to the Revolution of Dignity and is a part of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This Russo-Ukrainian war led to about 14,000 deaths. Now, as Russia continues to multiply their troops at the borders of Ukraine, this would signify that a threat of war is imminent, and this would be catastrophic for Ukraine. NATO's point of view. NATO responded by saying any country can become a NATO member, and it is an open-door policy, and if they are sending troops at European borders at standby, this is what they're supposed to do. If Russia joins NATO, they would do the same for Russia. This shows that NATO does not have a Cold War mentality. They're just maintaining precautions to what Russians might be planning. This has happened before in the annexation of Crimea and can happen again. So NATO is just being there for the Ukrainians and most probably preparing for the worst. Russia's point of view. Russia denies any plans of invasion. Even if there is no invasion, they've created a huge block of troops at the borders of Ukraine. I'm sure at this point Moscow wants Ukraine to realign with them. So, an invasion is more likely to happen as we haven't heard anything significant from President Vladimir Putin, and they are unable to provide any explanation for the growing number of troops stationed in Belarus. But since the Cold War would outweigh the benefits, this could mean that it will not initiate any sort of attacks on Ukraine, but as Russia sits together with China asking NATO to stop their expansion. This shows a sly move from Russia, which could mean their intentions might be a bit stained. China's point of view. As we can see over the years, China and Russia have been in a good relationship, with further plans to direct the power of Siberia into Chinese grounds. This ensures a lot of benefits for the Chinese nation since the Russians pledged solidarity during the Taiwanese issue or Taiwan Strait issue. The official stance from Beijing is that of a peaceful solution for Ukraine, but this would grant Beijing with tactical knowledge which will aid them in their Taiwan crisis. To sum up everything in this video, it seems as though Russia was trying to bully Ukraine and then NATO came in as a big brother, and then Russia went to China for support. Now China is indirectly threatening the US with the Cold War approach. But China would not want a Cold War as it will exhaust the resources and hinder the economic growth when COVID-19 has already put a dent on it. China's helped Russia, but there would be terms. However, China would not want to weaken its relationship with the US as that would further weaken its economy. What I would suggest is rather than trying to invade or mark their territory, they should come together and fight climate change. Well, this will be all for now. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.